Welcome to the Terran Files. I'm Jimmy Young, and I'm here with Ezra Watson, who is one of the Democrats that is running in the Democratic primary. Just to let everybody know, I have reached out to the other two that are running in the Democratic primary, and at this point, I have not gotten any response back. So with that, I'd like to welcome Ezra.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, I'd like to start off with a little bit of your background. You were born out in San Francisco, California, and you moved around somewhat, and you now live in Walton, New York, or Wilton, New York.
Wilton, New York. Yes, and that's in Saratoga County. Yeah, to answer your question, I was born in San Francisco and lived in Northern California, including Santa Cruz and Humboldt County, as well as Chicago during the early aughts to about 2006, moved to Virginia. So I've lived in DC area for about 6 years before moving to New York, which I moved almost 10 years ago. In 2012.
Okay, so you're pretty much a longtime resident now.
Yeah, pretty well established. I do like it here, and that's why I've been here for so long. Even given a for a better job and higher pay in the Boston area, I chose to live here. So it's by choice that I live in the North Country, the Adirondacks.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's start here. Going through your what you put down as values, which is more of the way of your campaign platform. There's a couple things that stuck out in my mind. One of them is the education. We all know that public schools here in the US are paid through tax dollars, unless you have kids going to a private school. When it comes to higher education, a lot of people, including myself, who've gone to college but never ended up getting a degree, end up being saddled with all this debt. You have an interesting thoughts on that?
Yeah, I also, but yes, I do, of course, as this is, second to climate change and Medicare for all, this is my third most important platform item. And in my experience, as I have gone to public school myself, as well as private, I actually did go to private school for grammar school. The public school where I was just not great. And this is, we're not talking about, I mean, to reference California, a lot of the public schools need a lot of help. Now, fortunately, where we are now, it's a great public school system in Saratoga. Saratoga has a great public school system. I'm quite impressed, and I'm really really relieved that it is so good. Yeah, again, mine wasn't so great in California, and I did go to also high school in San Francisco. But for higher education, we know that yes, taxes do pay for that through certain tax streams, even private schools, even Harvard has a tax stream, a federal tax stream going to it.
But that is isn't that through grants?
Grants as well, but keep in mind that Americans do not always have access to these grants. Sometimes they go to maybe people from Ireland who actually get a free ride in this country. So if they can, or even other countries might be included, that's the case. It seems like it really is So when we pay into taxes, and these taxes go for schools, like the public school system, we have kindergarten through 12th grade. We can extend that to include pre-K.
Mm-hmm.
And then extend that through community universities through PhD. So for instance, if you're rich, much like Stefanik's family, they can 529 non-taxed savings, but yet when she says things like, no, this is how her wording is just either, it demonstrates to me a lack of really understanding how the budgeting process works, because the people who work and go and pay taxes, those taxes go to help. There are taxes that end up in Harvard, and they end up for, various things, probably maybe some infrastructure stuff. But they go to all schools, not just public. So when people who are able to save that money tax-free, they're not actually, so she's saying, okay, why would we pay back student debt? And why would someone who chooses not to go to school want to pay for someone else to go to school without understanding that we already pay that? Might as well get the benefits for it as well. Like she got the benefits of taxpayer money, but yet she is not paying a dime in taxes. That's what she's playing, of course. Why would she? It would be the truth.
Okay. But what about the overall student debt? Because that's in the hundreds of billions of dollars when you really look at that. And that's nationwide. And some people, even if they get a degree, they spend 20 to 30 years paying off those student loans.
Yes.
Right now, the Biden administration has extended the the whole program to defer college loan repayments until after the first of the year. There are those in Congress that are vying for that to be gotten rid of. Just get rid of the student debt. Where would you fall on that?
I would vote for getting rid of all student debt.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like for me, I had to take out loans for my degree, my first degree in electronics. And I'll be paying that probably into retirement. Because what I'm making now with 2 degrees, 2 science degrees, I got my physics degree more recently, University at Albany. It's still not enough to pay any of the principal. So, of course, Stefanik might say, well, what about people who aren't planning to go to school? They would be paying for other people to go to school. But really, the fact is that tax dollars go to, I'm going to go ahead and assume mostly public institutions, higher education, like public institutions. And there are some great ones, University of Virginia, a lot of them public, but yet, so what she doesn't realize is that with the amount of tax dollars being paid and having been paid accumulatively over like the long term, I'm going to go ahead and say that I think that money's being squandered in one way or another. It should be going to hardworking Americans, not the special interests that are obviously overrunning DC and overrunning politics and getting the same cycling the same puppet politicians year after year to hold their turn, to keep their terms going. So you get a two-termer that really can't do anything. And the reason why a one-termer, 2 years, they can't make any real changes because they don't have the backing and they can be out like lickety split. It's a kind of rigged that way. And that's why we haven't seen real change, real reform, because I'm kind of sidetracking here, but I want to paint a picture because the special interest corporations, which really benefit no one else other than the top tier, the top 1% earners. It's that's how they control. They're controlling it. I don't want to sound like conspiracy theory, but that's why I'm running, and that's what I'm fighting against, to level the playing field, to get the tax people who are already paying a third of their taxes to get an education should they desire.
The other thing is that even though when you take out a student loan, once you are no longer in college, the repayment kicks in and interest is accrued onto that, which means that you're paying on that interest before the principal.
That's right, yeah.
And
as I have been doing in my experience, I paid actually probably zero interest, and I graduated in 2006 with that. And I've been making a decent wage, not chump change. Probably, but it's still, there have been times that I've been able to overpay and underpay, but really with just the cost of living and everything else, the interest is still the same. And I will say it's above 60,000 as it has been when I started.
yeah, and you're still paying on that interest.
Yeah, and I'm 20 years from retirement, ideally. That will still be there. So that's when Stefanik, I'm hopefully will get a chance to actually run against her if I get to the primaries. But this will be something she'll say is that, why are we going to make this generation pay? How she worded it. Why are we going to be putting the burden on this generation? Well, the fact is that I earned my degree and the burden's on me.
Right.
If I didn't go for a degree, I wouldn't have this debt, but I might not be making as much. But either way, it's really not doing us a favor in this country education wise, when there are a lot of reasons not to go to school and very reasons to go to school for a higher degree, as we are already suffering from one of the worst brain dumps of our generation. Did you know that the Air Force Base in Ohio, I think,
right.
Which you don't remember the name of that one?
I grew up in the Air Force. That would be Wright-Patterson.
Wright-Patterson. I remember Wright-Patterson when I was applying for a job. Wright-Patterson is very kind of strict. They want PhDs. They want people with PhDs in their engineering programs that require, very rigid background check, a government clearance, secret and beyond, probably top secret. I remember when I was applying and I was hearing recruiters say, we can't hire foreigners for these jobs, and yet we can't find, for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
But you have trouble finding qualified people within the United States. And I'm saying there has to be a better incentive to get people into school. And this debt that we're just, because I came from the background that I came from, I have to work for a living. Went to school while I was working, but yet they're punishing me for doing that. If you punish people for going to school, there's going to be a brain dump. Right.
But also, there are those that prefer not to go to college. There are the trades, and even those come with a cost. How would you resolve?
Those come with a cost as well.
How would you work to resolve that?
believe it or not, I have been to a couple trade programs just trying to get a job, technical.
Hmm.
I would qualify computer networking and IT as a trade.
Right.
So if we were to roll that into a bill, I would put that in there as a trade. I would also put a lot of highly paid technical jobs in as trades, and that might even be looked at as engineering today. But you have a point. That's true. We should make trades training free.
Hmm.
Because when the way they do budgets in Congress, they look at 10 years. Well, how do you think the economy is going to thrive in 10 years when you have people choosing? Everyone's got a different choice in life. They should be able to choose a degree or a trade, however they want to go. Maybe straight out of high school, they just want to go to work. They could go through these training programs, and how do you think that'll affect the economy? Very positively, I would say, over 10 years. Having high workforce in the United States that don't require a degree, and 100%, that's what I fully support. Yeah.
Okay. Another thing, and this falls into what's going on currently. You mentioned your little foreign policy thing, forever wars. We're getting out of Afghanistan right now, as you're probably aware of. We had to send 30,000 troops or 3,000 troops
Right.
back
over.
in order to help expedite people that need to get out of that country.
Yeah. To help
the idea is not to be there any longer than how it takes them. But even though what started off as the war on terrorism when we went into Afghanistan has lasted 20 years, a lot of people tend to overlook another war, which was the Cold War.
Yeah.
Which went from the 50s to the fall of the Soviet Union. That in itself is a forever war, even though nobody got killed. But currently, and I follow this pretty much, hostilities within the South China Sea between China, US, and its allies continues to go up. Not to mention tensions between North Korea, South Korea, and the US, but also the whole element of Russia and the Baltic states.
Yeah, of course.
And with all those tensions going on, and you can throw Iran into that mix too, seeing that they now have a hardline president.
Yeah, that's also true.
There could be a flare-up any place right now. And this is something that has always befuddled, you can say, diplomats at all levels, but also the military, because the diplomats are the soft power.
Right.
They're the ones that get the negotiations going and get the agreement signed. The hard power is the military. When everything fails with the soft power, the military comes in. But that also is very much of a balancing act. So how would you try and put forth anything to try and prevent, say, another war from happening or conflicts?
Well, obviously, you hit a lot of points there, and very good ones. obviously, those are very, very good like points. So at first, I guess that requires clarification to the forever wars. So first, I'll remind me if I get off track. The forever wars is like, we went to
just a second here. Okay, continue.
Yeah. So, okay. So if we go back in time to like say, okay, after World War II, there was the Korean War, which we obviously didn't win. Vietnam, which we didn't win. We just dragged out. It would have made no difference. It would have been better had we not gone at all.
Right.
I know it's painful for a lot of people. I grew up, knowing a lot of veterans from that era because that's just my age. Growing up as a child, people exposed to Agent Orange and wheelchairs. Yeah, I've met a lot of them. That was a war that would be included on that list that we didn't win, and we should have won lickety split. It should have been done in and out. That's what they said. It drew out so long, and we all know who got rich off of that. Rand Corporation, a lot of people. Bad decisions are made all the time, but these were bad decisions made on purpose for very nefarious reasons. Now let's jump. Okay, then we had the Cold War. Obviously, that's a little bit of a different scenario. We're very scared of Russia and their nukes and the nuclear power. It's an arms race, mutually assured destruction. It's crazy, but I can kind of get it. So let's jump ahead. So we're talking about, okay, and so Afghanistan, now we pull out, and guess what? The Taliban, it's like right back where we started. Would it have been better to just save all that time, trouble, lives, and money just to, like, you can't predict the future, but you can kind of see that the military industrial complex is benefiting. As an ex-employee of Raytheon, I know, we sell arms, to foreign, like Saudi Arabia to as if starving Yemen wasn't bad enough, we got to drop a bunch of they have to drop a bunch of our manufactured weapons on their heads as well. It's just completely nefarious. So the plan moving forward, you're talking about, okay, the issue with China and North Korea, obviously that's just not something you can overlook. But the point is that our budget is going to sustain bases overseas that really, are they all necessary? Because we're also driving up just completely, like, maybe we don't need all the offshore bases. Maybe we can improve stateside bases. Maybe we can improve that. Maybe we can reinvest in STEM and our research and the way technology is going, our space-based surveillance and everything. Like the fact that the politically motivated expenditures, jet fighters we don't need. Have you seen the disaster with the new, just like shoveling out contracts to Lockheed we don't need to do just because of corporate demand for, trying, like politicians like saying, okay, we're going to generate jobs. So they apportion all this defense money to build a plane we don't need. That kind of thing. But we could maybe focus on the important points, like you said. Could we maybe devote more strategic, analysis of the real dangers and just kind of cut the fat and just say, maybe work with our NATO allies and so forth, because what we're doing is we are gutting our interior while building this military wall of might around the world. It's going to crumble in on itself. And this is the way I see it. And I know that if I get elected, I will learn a lot more as I go. And I certainly am not trying to say that, and especially when we talk about our troops, the sheer moral degradation of squandering the lives of our troops abroad for no reason. So, you know, to these 10, how long is this war in Afghanistan going for? So long. And it's like
20 years.
Water for wars that we don't even intend on winning.
Well, as history has shown, when it comes to Afghanistan, back in the 70s, Russia went into Afghanistan on the pretense of propping up a government that was more in line with the Soviets. They fought the Mujahideen. We supplied them with weapons. They were able to defeat Russia. Russia pulled out.
Mhm.
Then, over time, the Taliban came into existence, which is now Al Qaeda.
Mhm.
So they are very experienced when it comes to, you can kind of say, even though it's in the middle of the desert, jungle warfare, much like the North Vietnamese were very in depth with jungle warfare during Vietnam.
Right. Yeah. True. Yeah. Very similar. Yeah.
So, and I agree that we should have been more, after 9/11, we should have been more laser focused on trying to disrupt that network, which we haven't really been able to do. And that comes down to a lot of different elements put out there. Hence, hard power, soft power, intelligence, cyber capability. So it's nowadays it's a multifaceted,
Yeah.
but we are also facing within our own country the start of well, there are those that have been radicalized by
That's
the
true. Yeah.
former president, and they are
Yeah.
something that we also have to deal with too. How would, and DHS and the FBI are on the forefront of that, seeing that the military cannot be used within the homeland.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how would, if you got elected, how would you try and push some kind of legislation that would work, you can say?
Right. Against the radicalized, I guess we could say, adherence of Q theory, if you want to call it that, more like conspiracy.
Yeah,
They are still, yeah, I will tell, see, it's like that actually kind of got me, I mean, like significantly worried, like really, I actually put like a pretty good amount of fear into me, really. Especially living in, you know, I mean, there have been quite a few at the January 6th Capitol insurrection from this area. It does make, I mean, I will say, you know, make it, but that put like some real kind of motivational fear into me to run, because it's frightening to see an erosion of our democracy. But as far as the Q element, yeah, the DHS had kind of been infiltrated to a certain degree as well. They tried to take over. That didn't succeed. Prior to January 6th, Trump really tried his hardest to get like real totalitarian control over key people. Fortunately, they didn't all go along with it. But the scary thing is that it certainly hasn't wormed its way through yet, and it's going to be around to stay for the foreseeable future. So the concern is like we do need DHS and the FBI to be investigating it to on high alert because they could come out of nowhere. I don't even know if I want to repeat the story that Q, maybe not, daughter's over there, but yeah, just it's a real concern for me personally. I know this, it's probably a concern for all people, but the whole thing about the anti-vaxxing, the masks, it's like there's two sides now, and it's like that's their signature, right? It's like it's sad, you know. If I were to try to look at it objectively, I'd say, you know, I don't want to say anything about somebody about, you know, there's a certain degree of personal choice, a certain degree of freedom, but when it's taken to this politicized kind of level, it's like, you know, I got people running around kind of, I would say, you know, frightened. You know, these are people with heavily armed with guns that just seem to want to keep going. They haven't run out of steam yet. You know, I think that the DHS and the FBI did their job quite well to prevent a lot of the firearms from making it into the Capitol, but that, you know, it's a very, you know, it's a divided country right now, and I personally do not, you know, I work with, you know, I work with and see, you know, Trump voters every day, you know, of course, you know, it's just your neighbors, whatever, your coworkers, you know, everything, but it, you know, I don't know if it's the effect of the media, everything, the way they bombard you with this stuff, but it's definitely, it's pretty deeply entrenched now. And I think there just has to be some really good leadership in both FBI, and I think their budget should be increased. I would vote for increasing their budget, basically just to make sure that you catch things before they happen.
Right.
You know, we got to protect people in our community. You know, I mean, someone like the whole, you know, attack on, you know, people like Asians and whatnot, it's quite scary. You know, I mean, that's, you know, targeted people. You know, anyone can be targeted. Like, so let's say you make a reference to someone's how they voted, you know, or their mask, or that not getting a vaccine. You know, it's like, oh, and now all of a sudden you've subscribed to a political, like a political side. There's no gray area. You know, I mean, it's like no one's looking at it's like nuance is gone now. It's like, okay, you're either this or that. And it's like, okay, you know, I think everyone should get vaccinated. Makes common sense. But now all of a sudden you've subscribed to that side of the political side. That to me is quite worrying.
Do you think that the Justice Department should file lawsuits against these social media outlets to force them to stop putting disinformation out?
Well, obviously that's a very good question, and a tricky one, as all good questions are. It's quite a slippery slope, and it's one that's disinformation. I would say I don't know if I agree with, you know, people depend on social media so much. I don't agree with just shutting someone down for saying something that, you know, I think if we were to do that, that's too slippery of a slope. And I think that, you know, we still have the First Amendment, and I think that if we start chipping away at that, it's a slippery slope that could, you know, people, but it's already happening. People on Twitter are just being shut down, and like they don't even know why they're being flagged. But I think that as far as disinformation, yeah, if it's going to lead people into harm. You know, I never would have thought 10 years ago that a virus would be such a contentious issue. It's a virus, you know, take care of it, protect yourself. But the way it's gotten is so political that it's like, you know, I think we should just stick to common sense type of laws that if someone is repeatedly spreading misinformation to lead people into, or based on, you know, Q crazy theories and whatever. I think if you can determine that without reasonable doubt, and if it can be determined that someone's purposely, you know, it should be the same investigative process that applies to everything. I don't think it should be I don't think it should be just be running rampant, you know, willy-nilly shutting people down. Absolutely not. No, I think it should go through a rigorous investigative process. And if someone is spreading misinformation, then yeah, they can be turned off. But not like just right off the bat, not like willy-nilly. It should be, you know, a common sense thing. Like if someone's, you know, spreading misinformation about how a virus works, and, you know, it depends. It also depends on their level of education and their degree. But I think we're in a situation where, yeah, if people are actually listening to people saying crazy stuff, that's kind of the problem. It's like you can't control how everyone's going to respond to a piece of misinformation. So I think you have to determine, is it actually widespread and dangerous? Yeah.
Yeah. The other problem that we also have is right-wing media that spreads disinformation. Fox News, One American, Newsmax, to just name a few. And they've been spreading disinformation about last year's election. And currently, the company Dominion has filed a lawsuit against those media outlets and Rudy Giuliani for the sum of over $1 billion. So,
And that's Dominion who filed that?
yes.
Okay. And that's and Rudy Giuliani, obviously, well, he got caught lying. It's pretty hard to dispute that. I think lawsuits, yeah, I mean, I don't know, are they effective? Probably. But, you know, no one's, but no, I don't see, I think what we really need is we need to give cybersecurity the tools to actually verify. You know, no one's really been able. I mean, no. I mean, so the Q theory. Okay, we all know what that is. It's, you know, the Democrats or whatever, even not exclusively Democrats, but there's a ring of, you know,
Pedophiles and
cannibals,
yeah,
running the country, and it's setting people off. And but the reason why it's out of control is, like, I mean, you can trace very similar manufactured stories along the same lines all throughout history. It's like, I think it's just a matter of education, really. We see just a complete lack of critical thinking. But how do you legislate that? Well, yeah, I think if I were elected, I would put it in a budget to say, you know, it's the responsibility of media, all media. You know, I might call it the Walter Cronkite bill. You know, report the facts and leave it there. Otherwise, you lose your license. You can't just. It's kind of. I imagine it like it was in Soviet Russia, a propaganda machine. That is what Fox has become. And in the United States of America, we shouldn't have propaganda machines. If they're spreading false information, they should be fined. Absolutely. I agree with that. A lawsuit should be filed because the result is widespread damage. You can't refute that.
Well, the problem being is that the Fairness Act, which covers broadcast news, that was put into effect, I think, during Nixon's time, and that was never renewed by Congress. So that is non-existent, and that held
Okay, yeah.
that
That's right. I get
held news organizations to a higher standard, and a lot of reputable news organizations, Associated Press, Reuters, NBC, CBS, and others, they still keep those standards high. But with these others, like One American and Newsmax and even Fox,
they're
not keeping those standards. As a matter of fact, and I forget who said it, but this is someone that works at Fox, said that we are in the entertainment industry, not the
I remember that,
news.
yeah. I've heard that, yeah.
So
yeah,
that's their mindset.
it's quite dangerous because people look at it as the news.
Right.
It's not like the National Enquirer where you can say, oh, yeah, an alien swapped heads with a, whatever. It's like okay, lizard man, was disguised as someone's husband or wife for 10 years. We all know that that's entertainment, but people look to Fox News as, the news, and something like I remember now that you mentioned the Fairness Act and how, I don't know, what did it lapse or something, or?
Yeah, it lapsed, and it was never, it was supposed to be voted on, and it never got there.
Obviously need that back. Yeah, because I think what we're witnessing right now is what happens when there are no standards. Fox might be a disclaimer that Fox is using, but sometimes, okay, it's just entertainment, but my coworkers, they play it, and they play it not through the headphones, but on speakers. So we all have to listen to it. There should be a rule against that. But yeah, it's just the ridiculousness that comes out of it. They're not looking at it as entertainment. They're looking at it as valid news.
Right. But, this is something I talked with somebody, just like, with some propaganda, they mix it conveniently with truths sprinkled around. Where that factual information is mixed in with their own stuff, which in itself ends up being disseminated out towards others. On Fox News in the evening, they have been known to do that.
Yeah, that's right. It's clever, but I will say that is straight out of the propaganda handbook that was used actively by Soviet Russia. It's quite effective, obviously. Like some of the, you wouldn't think anyone would believe it, but apparently it's working. So they learn from the best. Donald Trump, I can imagine. I'm speculating now. This is just my imagination running wild all the time. I can imagine them being in a room. Now, of course, this predates Trump, obviously.
Right.
But I can imagine him and Putin going into a room and saying, ex-KGB, like giving him one-on-one lessons on the propaganda, the guidebook to effective propaganda and all that stuff. That's literally, I mean, that's where, I mean, that's not, I would say that might be actually where it came from. A lot of it.
Right.
Sprinkling in, that's how disinformation is used against the population. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And half truths.
Okay. This is because one plays into the other. Environment and jobs in the economy, they both go, literally, they both go hand in hand with what's been going on with climate change. We have these fires out west. We have over in Europe, they have fires in Italy, Greece, Turkey.
Syracuse.
Right.
Or I mean, no, not fires, but yeah, like in Germany. Yeah. Sorry, I'm referencing the heat wave.
Yeah, well, they're also having
it's all connected.
wave,
yeah.
But we do need to move to a clean economy. Because you have kids, you want to see them grow up in a good environment.
Right.
And Biden does have a good plan that Congress is still trying to work out.
Yeah.
Good enough. And we do starting to see some car manufacturers that have said that by, was it 2030, 2035, all vehicles will be electric that they produce, which is good. But also, unlike going to a gas station, there is not enough of the charging infrastructure that we need to move that way. But also, there needs to be an emphasis on solar and wind, and I would even say to a certain point, hydro.
Yeah.
And that would work into the economy and jobs.
Right. And there are even other that can be explored as well. There's actually a whole swath of technologies. So what I envision, so right now Biden, it's better, I mean, I've seen some of what's in the new reconciliation deal. Some stuff good for where I'm running, like family farms and small businesses are exempt from any of the burden of paying for it, which is a good selling point. But as far as like implementing the power generating infrastructure, yeah, I see the Green New Deal. I see that package nicely in the Green New Deal, as far as a whole new way of looking at trades, guaranteed federal jobs, just opening the door to education for all. Anyone who wants to seek it, guaranteed jobs, and there are so many other technologies that could be explored, even hydrogen engines, which is basically like instead of running a power plant on gasoline engines, I've seen proposals for manufacturing hydrogen engines. That's a clean technology. Solar power has its difficulties in that it needs a huge amount of acreage and preferably located in an ideal spot. But they've been building them a lot more in upstate New York as well as Massachusetts. Wind has its own share of problems as well, even offshore. But these are little battles that might be won out of necessity. You know, it interferes with fishing patterns of people who have built their lives on fishing. So, you know, but but the question is, like, it's our planet. Without a planet, no one's going to be catching any fish ever. So it's really the priority is clean energy. As far as Biden's proposal, yeah, it's great, but it has a risk of disappearing next cycle. And on top of these issues is the running for office process. People like me who refuse money from corporations because I would not want to be beholden to any agenda that's going to hurt the planet or not allow me to respond to the people who voted for me and be responsible to them and not to special interests. That is the case with many politicians, Democrats and Republicans. But as far as the infrastructure bill, you know, admittedly, I haven't read the entire thing. I'm quite busy. I've been working 6 days a week, but from what I understand, it's 2035. It's still moving the goalpost, and we need action like 2 weeks ago,
Right.
not 15 years ago. But we can't go back in time. We're already too late in a lot of respects.
Mhm.
And we're too late to be dilly-dallying, you know, fighting with bipartisanship, you know, Republicans, Democrats. It's like it's like a weird form of theater. I'm not even sure I agree with. I've been a Democrat my whole life, and so I'm a Democrat. If a Republican came along and said an R next to the name, and they're fully on board with a Green New Deal, then that's how we need to go. But it's slowing us down, is what it's doing. And Joe Manchin and Sinema, they're not helping in any way, shape, or form. So it's moving too slow. And another thing that we've all been smacked over the head with is the severity just recently by the UN. I have a colleague who has said, well, before that, that they've been sugarcoating it all this time in a big way. Or they've been miscalculating the way the runaway effect. Even if we stop all of CO2 emissions now, there's still a residual momentum of heating as CO2 operates in the atmosphere. It's over the long term, and it doesn't dissipate fast enough. It'll keep heating, and then when it releases methane and more CO2 at the same time, you know, the methane is more shorter lived, but it's more intense.
Mm-hmm.
It might dissipate sooner, but not before it does its job of releasing more CO2. The whole runaway effect is in motion, whether we pump more CO2 into the atmosphere or not. And that's one thing that the UN has failed in its messaging. This should have been, I remember in the 90s watching the snow caps shrink. You know, we've had ample time and we're still shuffling our feet trying to kick the can down the road. Well, we've already run out of road, so there's nowhere to go. It's like, but at least some form of it is happening. But I think if we were to package this in a bill that progressives support, and that's why I'm progressive, because they're on board with the with it getting down to the policies and the nuts and bolts of getting what needs to be done. And that's why I put my faith in this caucus right now, is
Yeah.
that I feel like they're going to pressure, Biden. Like it seems like it's the progressive caucus that's moving things in this direction. But even with a handful, they're able to get stuff done. Imagine if we had huge numbers of progressives within the Democratic Party pushing it. It might save us, from disaster. That's my thinking.
Yeah. Well, I grew up in the 60s and the 70s.
Yeah.
And during the 70s, everybody knew what was then not climate change, but oh shoot, I forget what they called it back then.
Global warming.
Yeah, global warming. Thank you.
I actually know.
But which everybody was aware of, but nobody did anything about. Back in the late 90s, I believe, around 98, 99, the Department of Defense put out a report pointing out present and future existential threats, and climate was at the top part of it. Just because when resources dwindle,
Yeah.
wars start.
Mm-hmm.
And we have seen that play out numerous times in the African continent.
Yeah. Right.
And even though we are back with the Paris Climate Accord, not all countries have signed on to that.
Yeah.
Which even in that sense makes it even harder. Because we can go completely green right now if we want to, along with Europe. But you have these other developing countries that won't.
That's true. And their demand for energy is only going to grow.
Right.
Yeah.
Not to mention our demand, the demand for the Europeans.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. These up and coming countries, as they build their infrastructure, their demand for energy is growing. It's like you hear news about ingenious ideas, how a cage can trap water, and yay, it's great, but on a large scale, it's not going to be enough to fix the problem. So it's like so for me, if I were to get elected and addressing these issues, I would put all my faith into funding research and development, STEM research, allow those who want a degree to go, and don't put any roadblocks in their way like I had. I had to figure out how I was going to go to school, and work, and I'm in debt for it, and I have my regrets. Moving forward, there's no reason why we need to put that school is hard enough as it is. I took physics, it's quite hard. So we should be putting golden bricks down in front of people to go to college right now to get these higher degrees. They're the ones who are going to solve our problems.
Right. One of the things, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, and this is something that Andrew Yang brought up when he was running in the presidential primaries.
Yeah.
And I think you mentioned it too, and that's universal income.
Yeah, I did mention it. Yeah.
How would that be funded if it was to come to fruition? Because granted, there is only a handful of congressional members that are on board with something like that. How would you try to make that come to fruition?
Well, that has become kind of a wait and see thing for me because right now there's pilot programs for UBI, which is going to be quite helpful for people like me who lean toward it and might want to look at it seriously to see how these pilot programs are going. But I will say this, if you're not wealthy and you want to start a business like I did, imagine it like this. Okay, the rich people, they can make mistakes, they can afford it, they can pick themselves back up and try again. They have the freedom to do that. When they want to make a giant leap into the unknown, they have a cushy mattress to land on.
Right.
But people, they have a hard bed of gravel and nails if they fail. Their life might be really difficult because of the paycheck. So if you had UBI, the type of entrepreneurial development from average working Americans would grow quite fast. And this is where innovation comes from. And this, of course, must be good for the economy, I would think. So a thing that we need to get people comfortable with making bold, innovative, entrepreneurial decisions like startups. We need to pave the way for these, because these kind of innovations, this is what's going to solve our world's problems. There's another point to that. It might be a little science fiction-y, but I don't know if you've seen some of these robots today, but it's gotten to the point where even drones can actually harvest farm goods, apples, corn, better than people, as in they can pick apples without bruising them, and they don't get tired and they don't need water. If farmers can save money, then that's money that has been freed up for UBI.
Right.
I think it might take a couple trials for them to get on board and say, well, why would I give my money up? Well, when everything is run that way, it's like saying, okay, replace a robot with a human, give the human money that the robot is making for them. This is a concept that's going to take time to conceptualize and develop, but it also is kind of what Yang, I think, was talking about in the age of.
Yeah. The majority of the Republicans would be saying that this is a handout, that people won't work.
And that argument falls flat on its face, if I may make this point before I forget it. It falls flat on its face because they're saying, hold technology back because someone needs a job.
When the facts
that through logically, it just doesn't make sense.
When the facts are, and this goes back to something that my 6th grade teacher, Philip Hurd, told our class, is that as technology progress, there is future shock.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah.
And people have a difficult problem when it comes to losing their job over a machine.
Yeah. This is undeniably true. For someone like me, who would probably spend a lot of my free time meditating on a mountaintop and being just fine with that free time. Someone else who's used to working is going to go crazy. So like I said, this is not something that we would absolutely not want to roll out quickly. We'd want to collect some data.
Right. And from what I think it's in Southern California, I forget what city it was or is.
Yeah.
They have universal income for the most needy. And it is shown that those that receive that money are able to get employed.
Yeah,
Andrew Yang has seen the same results.
that's right. And in fact, there was another study in the Catskills here. It was about $500 a month, but it really eased the burden. And what it does is it puts you in a mindset where you work because you want to,
Right.
not because you have to, or else you're going to starve. And to me, that is correct. If there is such a thing as a right and wrong way to do things, that's the right way to work because you want to do it.
Mhm.
Because you have a desire to work. Yeah.
But the Republicans will still say it's welfare, it's a handout, people won't work, people will get lazy.
Well,
How would you counter that?
how would I counter that? Well, it's already like that because you have more of an incentive not to work now with Medicaid. You're better off being unemployed because the Medicare the care you get when you have Medicaid and you're unemployed is better than the care I'm receiving working a full work week and then some 60 hours a week sometimes. And here's why. Like a case in point, a real story, a friend of mine's girlfriend has type 1 diabetes, right? Requires insulin and was getting all the insulin she needed on time, every time for free because she was unemployed and had Medicaid. She got a job as a nurse and they took that away. And then she was trying to figure out where she's going to get insulin from. So in Republican, you can even look at Mitch McConnell, the famously Mitch McConnell state of Kentucky has the highest number of SNAP and Medicaid recipients. They have better Medicare than I do, and I've been working since almost every day since I was 16 years old, minus vacation days. So the situation we have now, it punishes you for working and rewards you for not working. So that's what we have now. So I would say that to Republicans. They're giving them handouts and they're rewarding them for not working and punishing them for working because the insurance you get, particularly in a gig economy where you're working as a contractor, right?
Right.
So you're not lucky enough to get a full, fully on board with the company. You're working as a contractor, which is most people are just moving toward that. The type of insurance available is crap. I have sleep apnea. I can't do a thing about it because they won't even cover a sleep study. I can't even get surgery on my elbow. My arm has a nerve thing going on. My wife has a tooth that, they only let you do one root canal every 10 years. So we're sitting there. We're actually afraid to go to the doctor now, and we're working. We're working hard.
Mm-hmm.
Situation we're in now. Now, does that make sense? Does that make sense to a Republican? Apparently it does, because that's what they want.
Yep. But would you say in order for Medicaid for all, which is something that Sanders and a lot of the progressives have been pushing for, along with universal income, would increasing the taxes on the wealthy, that 1%, along with multinational businesses, would you say that something like that would be feasible if that was to happen?
Yeah, I haven't really made too many bones about going after the multinationals and the wealthy for taxes, which they are not really paying right now. We've been discovering, hopefully, more reports about the wealthy. They just know how to hide their money. They've got the means to do it, and they do it. And so that money is it's research. It's not going. There's a few problems with not taxing the rich. First of all, they don't spend their money. So the money that floats up to the top stays there and doesn't go back into the economy. They don't spend their money here. So if they don't spend their money here and they don't tax, we can't tax their money to get the money back into our budgets, our treasury. Where's it? That money is just, it's just drifting off into oblivion. It's not coming back. They're not very good at reinvesting in America. they're very good at taking money out of America.
Right.
That's exactly what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to fix that. We need to close that loop. We need to get the money back into the economy. It's being drained by the rich. They're like a one-way valve. It's just the money's going out. They hoard it, and they make it to generate capital, which is not being taxed. It stays there in the rich cloud without trickling, without, to use the Reaganomic term, trickling back down. It doesn't trickle down. It's not like a rain cloud. It's not going to rain on us. It's just going to evaporate away, which is what it does. So this is the kind of concept, this is kind of thinking that you have to realize that it's not that we need to if they can't spend the money and give it back, we have to tax them. Now, there are billionaires who produce, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And if the biggest producers in this country are billionaires, they make stuff. I will say there are very few billionaires I know that I really am excited about. Elon Musk is one, because he's made great stuff that has actually changed the course of I mean, with Tesla and SpaceX and everything like that, the common person might be going into space in the next decade. These are the things that billionaires should be doing more of. And that to me is is probably the best reinvestment in this country. He's got some bad politics. I can forgive him for that. He said some stuff about COVID, but to me, it's like that is actually a good billionaire, in my opinion. The ones that produce, the ones that prop up this country properly, as a billionaire should be propping up this country by reinvesting in the country, making jobs here, not siphon the money away and just make it disappear into whatever bank account in Switzerland or wherever, Panama or tax haven. It's not coming back into the country. So it's not saying, oh, all billionaires are bad, but I will say that it would be nice if Elon Musk also paid taxes. So again, it's kind of a nuanced issue. I'm not saying it's, but if we were to implement the tax on the rich, that would make sure that loop that the money doesn't just disappear. It comes back to work for us, for everyone in the country. Everyone should have a bare minimum of, Medicare, food, shelter, all the basic necessities of life. It should be something you don't have to work for. You shouldn't punish a human being just for being born. You shouldn't have them be born into servitude. That's not what we should be doing in the richest country in the world.
True.
And we can take care of everyone.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you on that. But and this is where political ideologies clash.
Mm-hmm.
Progressives, moderates, conservatives, so on and so forth. And their ideology tends to clash, and it leaves everybody else that's in the middle.
Well, yeah, it's the people they're trying to serve are the ones who suffer the most.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say that a billionaire is neither expected to serve nor is it their duty to serve, as it is in government, but they should have some kind of idea. Now, another thing about billionaires, they like to pretend like they're putting money back in through organizations, but those also are misused as tax havens, and they have access to that money as well. Trump is one of them. A lot of them have done that. But if I missed the other part of your question, I apologize. I forget what it was.
It was really more of a statement than a question.
Yeah.
But
how we're going to pay for UBI. Another one is carbon tax. And
right.
That's remembered. Carbon tax and Medicare for all. Well, carbon tax. I think the UN came out with some or maybe some other organization, what we should be taxing. There have been other countries that have done it. Sweden, they say we should be taxing $125 per ton. I think it needs to be more like $200 per ton of carbon emissions. And these are the large corporations. These are not dairy farms and stuff like that. These are the big carbon producers. Should be taxed. Of course, that's quite a lot of revenue, and it steers things toward green, steers everyone toward green technology. You know, we're not going to need oil very shortly, except for maybe to make things like Calres O-rings and stuff like that. If they even need that for that anymore, they can do it probably synthetically. So there's not going to be a demand to drill oil, and that's good. But as far and for Medicare for all, I've read most of the Bernie proposal. That's the one I'm familiar with. And that one's, everything under, including dental under one thing. I would put addiction recovery and mental health assessments, as we're getting a growing number of functioning autistic people. But and any other ailments, it's running rampant. And so that needs to be included, because part of the success of conspiracy theories like Q is because it requires, I think, some form of mental illness and trauma to get kind of immersed in that anyway.
No, I put that in the category of gullibility and stupidity.
Yeah. Sometimes there's no cure for stuff like that, but at any rate, but this proposal, okay, they've thrown some numbers out there. Now, of course, special interests like the insurance companies. Well, first of all, the budget we have now is ginormous for Medicare. It's freaking huge. It's second only to the defense budget. So there's a huge amount of money there. Standing in between that money and people who need it are insurance companies.
Right.
So getting rid of them is key. I have not had experience with my insurance company. They make me do their work for them too, on top of not giving me coverage. And they're incompetent.
Then you have a pretty shitty insurance company.
Yeah. So on top of that, so it would save, okay, on the low end is $600 billion per year. On the high end is over $1 trillion a year. Taking out all the insurance companies, liabilities, all that stuff, and directly paying into infrastructure for medical clinics, hospitals, all that stuff would actually save money.
And, okay. Now, gonna end it here. If you don't mind, I'd like to have you back on at a later date.
Okay, I'd love to come on. Yeah.
And you have a very nice evening and a fun-filled weekend.
Thanks for having me on, Jamie. And yeah, I do look forward to doing again. It has been quite a good conversation.
Yep. Have a nice evening.
All right, you too. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.